Hello, hello, my friends. It's me. Guys, look, I've been wanting to create content like this for a long while, just so I can share everything coaching related to the benefit of you guys in terms of education, mindset, training, nutrition, everything in between. But it's also an opportunity for me to essentially get better at teaching in this type of format, right? So, what better way to deliver this content than through videos like this, raw, unscripted, unedited, just me taking you through really different topics, right? I've been wanting to do this for a while. It was just a matter of getting things set up. But then I realized I was kind of just waiting for a perfect situation. You need to get the right lighting, you need to get the right software set up. But as I tell my clients, there's no perfect time. It's just a matter of rolling with what you have and always something instead of all or nothing, right? So here's what I'm going to do today. I want to talk a little bit about program design, which I think is a very interesting topic. And I think, for many of you guys and girls that are already training, hopefully by the end of this video, I can give you some insights into how you can improve your own training um, and get more out of it, right? So I'll be using my own training program as an example. So I'll talk about the intention, the exercise selection, the reps, the sets, the modes of progression, and hopefully put that all together for some really important takeaways that you could apply the next time you're in the gym, essentially. Okay, so let's pull that up and I will talk you guys through it. Okay, so let's see. Is that visible enough? It made it small. There you go. All right. So I've been training for a number of years now, and one thing which I have learned for adherence to your training program is simply just enjoyment, right? So with program design, we can make it as complex and as simple as we like. There are so many ways we can look at this in terms of short-term planning or long-term planning, which is what we call periodization. But as optimal as we can make it, it still needs to be enjoyable. And of course, on paper, have some effective principles, right? There are some key principles that should be applied to any program in order for it to produce a impressive outcome. And I'll go over those today. All right, so just for context, what I'm currently working on is a combination of qualities. So I still want to get stronger. I still want to gain muscle mass, so hypertrophy. But I also want to add in some power-based movements, right? Last year, I basically focused only on strength and hypertrophy. There was no power-based training involved. So as a result of that, I didn't feel very athletic. On top of being in a calorie surplus, I felt a bit fluffy and slower than I would have liked. But this year, I've gone a different route. As much as I'm still kind of building up my calories and trying to gain some size in the surplus, I'm holding on to some athletic movements. So what that would look like is in the beginning of my sessions, I will do a velocity-based movement, something that will keep me moving fast and with intention, low load, and that'll allow me to maintain that quality, right? So in my case, I still want to maintain, or if not improve, I'll say improve, my vertical jump, my broad jump, because that's going to help me very much in like just learning some flips outside the gym. So that's something which I'm really wanting to push, is to get better at like the basic acro and parkour free running, right? That's making a return. But I want to be able to do it in a more systematic way, right? I've never really taken myself through a progressive, systematic plyometric program. And this is how I've kind of introduced it, given that I still have some experience with plyometric work, like jumping. But again, I'll show you how it looks like in my program. That's the power-based element. So in saying that, specificity. Think about the outcome you're after and then work backwards. Okay. So for me, if I want to be fast, I need movements where I'm moving fast. Makes sense enough, right? Also consider, if you want to move fast, you need to be strong. If we think about power as strength expressed over time, well, we know that, or force expressed over time, we need a foundation of strength in order to be powerful. Further down from that, we need, in order to be strong, we need mass, right? So that is essentially hypertrophy. Hypertrophy benefits strength, strength benefits power. This is why I have all of these elements in my program, not just one or the other. Okay, so let's have a look. It's a 4-day training program I'm currently doing. And prior to this, I was doing a bit more volume. So what I realized by this is, anytime you want to get powerful with your lower body, you'll find that your bodybuilding training needs to be, you need to consider the volume, because doing legs twice a week, very challenging, at an intensity that is actually going to be stimulating, you're going to be quite sore. And what I realized quite quickly was doing legs twice a week at an intensity that I would lean towards to grow made it very hard to practice other things outside the gym. So the compromise is I will always start my sessions, my lower body sessions, with a power-based movement. So in this case, I got some depth jumps, double leg, single leg, and then eventually I'll do depth jumps with dumbbells. That's essentially just jumping off a higher platform to the floor, minimal ground contact time, and jumping straight up. So the purpose of this is to build tendon stiffness, to build elasticity in my connective tissue, like my Achilles, which is really important for jumping, right? It's not just about the strength or the power in your quads or your glutes. It's also about the elasticity in your tendons, right? So I got depth jumps, pogo jumps. So pogo jumps are what we call a low amplitude plyometric exercise. If you consider something like skipping rope, right, there's still a, what would you say, a plyometric element to that. So you're bouncing off your calves, your ankles. You're working on that elasticity of your tendons, right? That's kind of a very basic form of plyometric, which would then be progressed into, say, some form of jumping. Which in my case, I've got a broad jump, which is just simply a distance jump, okay? So 2 lower body sessions, each beginning with a power-based movement. Again, if you want to focus on power, do it before your strength work. And power is all about intent, it's about velocity. It's hard to move fast when you're already fatigued, so do that while you're fresh. Then move on to your strength, then move on to your hypertrophy. So back to my example. I'll do my power-based movements over here. Then I will go to my strength or hypertrophy movement. In this case, it's just a hack squat, right? I don't really like barbell squatting. I don't find it enjoyable. I don't really push it as hard. And technically, if the goal is hypertrophy, a hack squat would be a better option, just because with any machine squat, you can take it closer to failure without things like your lower back, your bracing, your stability being a limiting factor. The limiting factor here is either just your quads giving in, so you can safely fail, or if you're quite aerobically unfit, then you might be an aerobic limitation. But I generally recommend having a good base of aerobic fitness, because contrary to most people's beliefs, that will actually help your weight training, especially on something like legs. Okay. And again, low volume, hack squats, paired with calf raises. I put calf raises not at the end, which is what most people do, simply because any movement that you put at the end of your session is naturally going to be treated with less intent and intensity. As humans, we're effort averse, meaning that once we start to experience mental fatigue, the quality of our training will start to decline. To the best of our intentions, it's just the progression of fatigue, mental fatigue, physical fatigue, and so forth. And some more quad work, so some leg extensions, again, machine-based, I can take it to failure, paired with some sissy squats. That's just what would we call a superset in a traditional sense. So like you're doing a quad movement with a quad movement. I just like this pairing because it hurts. And interestingly, the leg extensions kind of work that shortened position in the quad. The sissy squats test that lengthened stretch position. So it's a good way to essentially take your quads to failure through a full range of motion and kind of test it across different muscle lengths, right? What we've observed from the research is that the exercises that put the muscle in a very lengthened position under load, those movements tend to be a lot more stimulating. So if you consider, say, a hack squat, that's going to be more stimulating than the leg extension, even if load is equated. Because in a hack squat, you're loading the muscle when it's fully stretched at the bottom, right? You're going ass to grass, quads lengthened. Leg extension is hardest in the top position. So we have different, basically, the movements are hard at different points for those 2 exercises. And then some abs, which suck, but I do them. Okay. So again, simple split, upper, lower, upper, lower. In terms of splits, there are so many different ways you can split up your training program. I like to keep it simple. I'll either use an upper lower split. I do quite like a half body or full body split if you like to distribute the volume more, right? So let's say that in my program, for example, I have 10 to 11 sets of chest. I could put that in all one day, have a dedicated chest day, or I could distribute that across multiple days. Pros and cons. If you put it all in one day, some people do this, and it's a traditional bodybuilding split. Have a chest day, have a back day, have a quad day, whatever it is. It's a lot of work in one day for the same muscle group. So what you might find is maybe the first, in this case, 5 to 6 sets, you'll be able to uphold quality. But again, referring back to that progression of fatigue within a session, you might hit that 50 minutes, 60 minutes of training, and then things start to just decline in quality. You're not going to be able to lift as heavy by that point, which is important because load is a very important factor for stimulating strength and hypertrophy, right? if we spread this out across the week, across 2 or 3 days, it makes sense. We're going to be able to lift more weight in each individual set, and that's important. So oftentimes you'll see this in like a full body program. So every day you'll hit like maybe one set of a different muscle group, and that'll be a program. And if you only have, say, one set of quads that day, like 3 sets of quads that day, and then 3 sets of chest, and then 3 sets of back, you're going to be able to give each muscle group your full attention. This is really good in the beginning. So if you're starting training, use like a full body split, right? I even use a full body split for some of my more advanced trainees as well, as a way to manage fatigue. Or if you're doing like a very low frequency program, maybe you're only in the gym twice a week, 3 times a week, full body can be a really good way to get the most out of your training. So it rates very highly on what I call training economy. Okay. So that's training splits. There's also push, pull, legs. There's half body splits. What I would say is simpler is better. There isn't one magic split that's going to enhance your progress. It's what allows for recovery. Okay. Recovery is also another reason why I wouldn't put everything on one day, like all your chest, or all your shoulders, or all your quads in one day, because you're going to be sore for like longer than required, right? And there's only so much stimulation you can get within a single session. And if your work has exceeded your ability to recover from that session, then that extra work that you've done has essentially not really been much benefit, okay? You might as well have just done it when you're fresh in your next session, some other point in the week. Hope that makes sense. Okay, I guess the next thing I can talk to is general volume. Like, I got volume here. I generally work at around 90 sets a week. Again, is that a lot? Depends who you are. You generally want to start on the lower end of the volume. So it might just be 10 sets of a muscle group, like 6 to 10 sets per week, right? In this case, again, chest, I'm doing 10 sets, shoulders, 10 sets, back, a bit more. All my leg sets across glutes, hamstrings, and quads, that all amounts to 18, but it could be less, right? Really, volume, which is the total amount of sets that you're doing to failure or close to failure, is going to be inversely proportional to your intensity. So if we define intensity as how heavy you are going in relation to what you could do for 1 rep, so let's say that I can bench press 100 kilos for 1 rep, that would be my 1 rep max, right? So the higher my intensity, or the closer I'm pushing to 100 kilos throughout the week, the less sets of those I can do, because fatigue. If I'm working at a lower intensity, let's say I just work at around 70 kilos, I can generally do more sets. This is why I recommend you start your volume on the lower end, build up your training intensity, which is a very important skill, right? It's not just about the amount of time you spend in the gym. It's not about the amount of sets that you do or the amount of exercises that you do. It's about the exercises that you give your full intent and push very close to failure, if not to failure, and doing that repeatedly. Now, if you do that, you might find you don't need a whole lot of sets to do that, right? This essentially eliminates what we define as junk volume, which is essentially work that you're doing in the gym that isn't actually contributing to your progress. It's just extra work for work's sake, right? We want to avoid that. Once you have an idea of how much volume you can handle, you can bring it up over time. And once you hit a point where it's starting to undermine your recoverability between sessions, let's say again, you hit your chest on Monday, you're doing maybe 7 sets that session, and then let's say that you're hitting your chest again on Thursday, right, your 2nd upper body day, and your chest is still really, really sore. Maybe you need to pull back a little bit. Pretty intuitive. Okay. So volume and intensity have an inverse relationship. If you put both up at the same time, you're going to burn out really quickly. And that's not really good for longevity of your training. You want to be able to be repeatable week after week. Okay, and occasionally you might need like a week off, or a recovery week, so to speak, just to recalibrate. Okay, so what next? All right, now I guess I'll speak a bit about exercise selection. I touched on this a bit earlier, but with your exercise selection, you want to be predominantly using compound movements. So compound movements, quite simply, are just movements that involve a lot of muscle groups, and they generally involve more than one joint. So if you consider like a pull-up, it crosses 2 joints, your shoulder and your elbow joint. So you're utilizing a larger amount of musculature, your biceps, your back, your forearms. Compare that to just a bicep curl, which is just a single joint movement. You're just using your bicep and I guess a bit of forearm flexors, but mainly your biceps. Most of your program should be compound movements, okay? They're going to have the best potential in the long term to put weight on, to increase in load. Any movement, here's how I would define a good movement for you. And I say for you because there isn't a perfect exercise for everyone. A perfect exercise for you will be different for me. Moreover, my perfect exercise might change over time. There might be a period of time where hack squats are really good for me because I want to focus on growing my quads, feels good in my joints, and I can just progress that. At some point, I might get bored of that, right? I might just not have the desire to push it. I'm starting to hit a wall where I just can't increase the load, I can't increase the reps, and I've stuck it out, and it's just not moving. Well, then it makes sense at that point. I would rotate that movement for something else, and maybe it is like a back squat or like a safety bar squat. At that point in time, maybe that's the really good movement that I should be doing because I train harder, I enjoy it, and mechanically, it's still a really good option. Right? You get a lot of quad involvement, right? With good bracing and technique, you can still train very, very hard and push your quads close to failure. So, anytime you see, secret exercises to grow this muscle or that muscle, or, POV, my delts blew up when I started doing these. There aren't any secret exercises, right? And even if you look at my program, it's fairly simple. Leg curls, split squats, a fat dumbbell press, like a chest fly, some arms, right? There's nothing particularly revolutionary here. What will produce progress over the long term is just simplicity and progressive overload. Okay. Progressive overload combined with recovery, so sound nutrition, sleep, stress management, which we can discuss in a different video. That is the formula for long-term progress. Okay. Now, it sounds very boring. I understand, right? Doesn't sound particularly sensational. But when you remove the fixation to want to do everything fast, fast muscle mass, fast strength, fast whatever, you will be able to enjoy this process a lot more. You won't be as allured by kind of sensational headlines of, this exploded my muscle growth progress, or this secret tip here, or whatever it may be, right? Social media is prevalent with this type of content. Don't be deceived by it. Focus on the timeless principles, progressive overload, and everything else I mentioned before. Okay. I guess in terms of reps and sets, there used to be a bit of a myth that, we had strength rep ranges and then hypertrophy rep ranges. From the context of muscle growth, generally speaking, 6 to 20 to 30 reps, you're going to be growing in all that range. So whether it's like 8 reps, 10 reps, 20 reps, assuming you have pushed those sets close to failure, you're going to grow. Okay. The only difference between failing at, say, 7 reps or 20 reps is the lower the rep range, your technique is going to have to be very dialed in, because the lower the reps, the heavier you're going, right? And it's less forgiving. So if you're doing, say, 5 reps, 5 reps on a dumbbell press, you'd better be stable, right? Because it's not forgiving at that weight. If it's something like, say, 10 to 15 reps, well, you're going to be using less load. It's a bit more forgiving, okay? So do you have to always work at the same rep range? No, I recommend to diversify things. You might ask, well, if 6 reps produces the same result as 20 reps, why don't I just do 6 reps for everything and save time? The logic is sound. In reality, if you did that, you'd run into issues. Some movements just aren't designed to work with high load and low reps. You can try doing 6 rep bicep curls. You could. And there is a promising amount of evidence to show that it might be beneficial, or it might have the same benefit as going to, say, 15 reps or anything in between. But trust me, from a coaching standpoint, after coaching many people, the practical considerations reign supreme. What I mean by this is you have to consider connective tissue health, your joints. You have to consider the stability of the movement, right? Are you able to actually stabilize yourself enough to do just a heavy 6 reps? More so, can you do that repeatedly? So I'd normally look at connective tissue health, because if you went heavy on everything, every single time, your joints will get beat up, and that might become an impediment to your training frequency, which is important for long-term progress. Okay, so diversity of rep ranges. The only exception is that if you're wanting to build specifically strength and power, then it would make sense to keep your reps lower, because that is what strength is. It's your ability to maximally express force and that's going to be working at like the 1 to 5 rep range, right? The reason why you wouldn't, like, say, aim to build muscle mass and just do many sets of like 1 to 5 reps is because you'd have to do so many sets to get a good amount of volume to then produce a hypertrophy benefit, which is time consuming, but also very neurally taxing because, again, if you had to choose between 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps of a bicep curl versus 12 sets of 3 reps, the reps and sets might be, the total volume might be similar in terms of reps times sets, but the impact on your body, very different. And also your training fatigue, that'd be very mentally exhausting. Okay, so look, I'll leave it there. Hopefully that gives you a really good insight into what I consider for my program and what you can do for your program as well. Okay, I want to be able to dispel a lot of the mythology around training, give you really simple takeaways, because again, go online, you're going to get a multitude of opinions that can confuse you and encourage you to lose touch with what actually matters for effective long-term progress. But that's what I'm here for. Okay, so hope you enjoy that, guys. Any videos or requests or feedback or comments, or maybe if you want me to look at your program, message me. Happy to do that for you. See you in the next one.